In the previous how-to videos you learned quite important things already. All these settings, however, are somewhat incomplete without actual email channels for the communication with your customer. We will handle email channels with filters, signatures and the general email settings for this reason today. This video will not help you if you're looking to hook up Google or Microsoft 365 based email accounts. I will provide these in the next videos for a better overview. Before we dig into managing email channels, a small foreword on error handling. All channels in Zammad are self-healing. Self-healing means that the next time the operation, like a send out or receiving emails, is successful, the error state will be removed. This can be especially confusing on the outgoing parts of channels. Zammad tries to send emails up to 4 times. The 4th time a send out was not successful, it will add a yellow banner below the affected articles. As of now, there is no resend option, which forces manual interaction from your agents. If you are just starting with Zammad, please be aware that Zammad has a predefined and active default trigger. This trigger answers on all incoming emails and may cause inconvenience on your end, especially if you pour old emails into Zammad. If that's not what you want, consider setting the trigger to inactive beforehand. I thought this context is important to you. Before we add a new email mailbox to Zammad, a fair word of warning. Zammad defaults to remove all messages from your mailbox. I will point out that in the dialog, of course. If you're just testing Zammad and you're not sure if it's the right fit for you yet, consider using a test email account as well. Using productive mailboxes in these cases can be a huge problem if you decide against Zammad. Okay, let's go. Within the email channel management, you are shown all available email channels if there are any. In Software as a Service, you will have a fixed Zammad.com email account on the top that you cannot adjust. Also, on Software as a Service you will not see the notification channel, as that one is managed for you as well. To add a new channel, simply use the button on the lower left. By default, Zammad will request a minimum set of information. The organization and department name in combination with the agent's full name will be used as display name in the from address. Email and password is the email address and password of the mailbox you want to connect. The destination group is the group all fetched emails from this mailbox will be fetched to. It can be adjusted later on as well and even be manipulated with email filters. Last but not least, the setting destination group sending email address allows you to set the new added mailbox's email address as outgoing email address to the destination group you have selected. Optionally, you can tell Zammad to not change the group's email address. This makes sense if you have several mailboxes pointing to one group. Now, if you'd hit connect just now, Zammad would try to guess the correct mailbox settings and continue with the outgoing configuration. This has serious downsides, as you have no control over what Zammad guesses and that all emails will be removed from the mail server by default. This can cause serious trouble if you do not wish for that. For this reason, I always prefer to click on Expert on the lower left. This gives you much more options and control over what you configure. The dialog expands and you now can choose the mailbox type. You can choose between the fetching protocols IMAP and POP3. Next, you will have to provide the hostname of your email server. Should the username of the mailbox differ from the email address, you can adjust it here. Password should be pre-filled from earlier already, so we can skip to the security-related settings. You can adjust the SSL setting. If needed, adjust it to start TLS or even disable secure connections entirely. Wherever you'd want to do that. Zammad requires valid SSL certificates, so if you're using self-signed certificates for email, you could disable the SSL verification here. In case you have to add your own CA certificate to Zammad, you can do so within Security in the SSL Certificate tab. Now adjust the port if needed. If you want to fetch email from a subfolder instead of the inbox, you could configure it here. This is useful if you want to hook up mailboxes that generally are not part of Zammad, but would require you to forward mails to Zammad. This annoys users, is error prone and also loses the original sender information. Using reply-to headers or redirects could solve that, but with most email tools out there, that it's more on the super annoying side. Just moving a mail into a folder is much easier here. Last but not least, decide either if you want to keep the messages Zammad fetches on the email server or not. Now this is important. If you choose Zammad to keep emails on an email system, it will ignore all emails that have been marked as read. It will only fetch unread email. Zammad will also recognize message IDs of emails it's already fetched, so even if you set an already fetched message to unread, Zammad will not fetch it again. On the other side, if you choose Zammad to remove messages from the server, it will fetch all emails regardless their read state. It will also not care about duplicate message IDs. Usually you choose to remove emails from the mail system to ensure that the mailbox doesn't get over its quota. Of course, administrators could monitor these scenarios and ensure that the mailbox always has enough quota on the other hand. It's just some kind of flavor you have to decide on. Please also note that some email systems may have fairly high trouble listing folders with thousands of emails. This depends on the email resources and may lead to timeout errors on Zammad's end. The keep messages on server setting is only relevant and available to IMAP mailboxes. With POP3, the server decides if a fetched email is going to be removed or not. Now click on Continue to configure the outgoing part of the email channel. In case Zammad detects existing emails in your mailbox, it will also offer you to run an archive import on the mailbox. The archive import has serious advantages for older emails. You can tell Zammad what state these emails should be imported in. These tickets can be closed by default, which makes a lot of sense for archived emails. It will also cause no trigger-based messages and also no agent notifications to be created. This creates the least noise possible. In order for Zammad to pull only the right emails as archived emails, you will have to define the cutoff time. Every message that is older than this date and time will be considered an archived message. Anything after that will behave exactly like you would expect it to be in Zammad. Archived and closed tickets in general can always be found via Zammad's powerful full-text search. If you don't want Zammad to import messages in archive mode, use the skip button on the lower left. If you click on Continue instead, Zammad will run the archive mode in the way you configured it. With Send Emails Via, you can choose between SendMail and SMTP for your sendout. Please note that SendMail requires a local MTA like postfix on your system and is not available as an option within Software as a Service. You can adjust the hostname, username and password if they are different from your incoming email configuration. Some community users even use different providers that allow bulk emailing. This does always depend on the email provider you're using, because some providers have fairly low limits. Looking at you, Microsoft. Now configure the port your SMTP server is listing on and choose to verify the SSL connection to it or not. Should you choose SendMail instead, all these settings are not available. Zammad will pick the email address from the incoming configuration when communicating with SendMail. If you now continue, Zammad will verify the provided information. For this, it will send two emails. One to the mailbox you connect to verify sending and receiving is working as expected, and one to verify external SMTP sending at discard.zammad.org. The email address is hosted by the Zammad GmbH and immediately discards the test message. It's simply to ensure you can send mail to external parties. If everything works out, the model will close. A side note on the verification mail to the connecting mailbox. If you choose to fetch from a subfolder here, you will most likely have to move the test email from the inbox to the subfolder you chose. Otherwise, the verification process will ultimately give up and fail. From this point on, Zammad will begin to fetch the new mailbox roughly every 30 seconds. This interval highly depends on the general load of your system and the number of mailboxes you're adding. If you have many mailboxes and high email volume, this interval won't be met. At this time, Zammad works on its mailboxes in serial. You cannot change this behavior. The Zammad notification channel is responsible for all notification-based emails. This does explicitly not affect trigger-based emails. These emails will mostly be relevant for your agents as they will be notified of new and updated tickets, pending ticket-reached reminders and service-level agreement-based warning and breach notifications. The level of notifications I just mentioned can be adjusted by every agent based on their need, of course. Additionally, agents and administrators will receive emails upon logging in from new devices and locations. All users, no matter of their role, will receive password reset emails and automatic account link notifications if they are logging in with a third-party login for the first time. The notification channel is an outbound channel only. Zammad does not support replying to notifications, especially not in an updating the ticket manner. Even though there are some clever admins that work around that situation, it is absolutely not recommended and will cause unexpected behavior on Zammad's term. This following part is only relevant for on-premise users. In Zammad Software as a Service, you're forced to their noreply@zammad.com email. You can request them to adjust the display name from Notification Master though. The successful functionality of the notification channel is crucial, especially if you have no access to Zammad's command line. Zammad supports one notification channel only. Removing and adding new ones is not possible for this reason. All you can do is to use the edit button next to outbound. You can choose between SendMail, which is the default, and SMTP. If you choose SMTP, you naturally need to provide hostname, username, password and the port to use. Please note that the username is not the email address Zammad uses for outgoing email. This is a bit counterintuitive during the configuration of this part. The email address can be set in the Settings tab. We will talk about the setting further on, so you may want to skip that part and revisit it later. Zammad will verify the send out to external, of course. Please note that while the channel defaults to SendMail, this will not work if you don't have it installed. Switching back from SMTP to SendMail is not possible because Zammad then verifies its presence. This will cause the channel to be in error state and no emails being sent out. With the new channel in place, you can add further aliases to it. Keep in mind that these will only function if your mailbox may use these. This depends on the configuration of your email server and differs from service to service. Email addresses you add here have two functions for you. Firstly, Zammad needs to know all the email addresses it uses as a system. This helps Zammad to recognize if an email address in a fetched email is actually its own or not. Zammad denies using its own email addresses as recipients. It doesn't make much sense to send out an email via your email system just to fetch it some seconds later. Secondly, these email addresses can be used in other groups as outgoing email address. Even though each group only allows one outgoing email address, the number of incoming different email addresses is virtually unlimited. One mailbox technically can serve several groups at once in Zammad. To add a new alias to the list, simply click on Add within the email addresses area of the channel. Now provide the display name and email address you want to use. You could even adjust the channel that's to be used here, but that's more relevant for general managing of existing aliases later on. Of course, you can also add internal notes for other administrators or yourself if needed. After submitting the changes, you can configure the new email address in groups if needed. There are several things you can manage on a channel. First, there's a colored dot in front of inbound and outbound that indicate the current health of both directions of your channel. If the dot is yellow, this doesn't mean that there's an error, but that there's no action done on that regard. This usually affects the outbound portion of a channel until the first email was sent. Right below inbound and outbound, a red bar will appear with error messages in case the channel has any trouble of whatever kind. This error state is also reflected within Zammad's monitoring section if you're using an on-premise installation. This is followed by some basic information that help you to identify the channel, including the used protocol, hostname and usernames. On the lower left end you can see the current active destination group for the affected channel. By clicking on the group name, a new modal pops up. Here you can adjust the destination group to a new group if desired, along with a new outgoing email address for the above selected group if you want to. This section will offer you all available aliases to choose from. If there's already an outgoing email address, note that you will have to select Do Not Change Email Address, as by default Zammad will change the alias. This might be unexpected to you. After you have submitted this change, Zammad will fetch new messages to the new destination group. Please note that this has no effect on already running fetch processes and might still be affected differently by email filters. On the lower right hand of the channel, Zammad lists all configured email addresses of the channel. You can remove these at any time, as long as there is more than one email address configured. If you use the X behind the email address, it will be removed from Zammad's database immediately. If it was connected to a group as outgoing email address before, this group will no longer have an email address. The side effect on this situation is that your agents suddenly no longer are able to send emails via this group. In the same area, you can also change the configuration of each email address. This is mainly relevant for the display name, however you can also move the alias in between different channels if you'd like. You can also temporarily disable the channel assignment, which will cause Zammad to show the inactive email address above the channels. There you can remove them entirely or reassign the alias to an email channel by clicking on it. This is useful if you do not want to lose the group's outgoing email address setting. Without a connected channel, replying to tickets naturally won't be possible. On the lower right, you can disable the channel without removing it entirely. This change will become effective as soon as the channel fetch process has finished. If you add a new account with tons of mail and it just keeps pulling data, restarting the worker process might be a quick fix for this. Last but not least, you can delete existing accounts. Now the removal of a channel is behaving a little bit different than you might expect. Zammad removes the channel but keeps the email addresses that were connected to it intact. This allows you to reassign them to other channels if needed. Of course, you can just delete them afterwards as well. Zammad provides you with email filters. These filters can change the way an incoming message is being processed. It can even be ignored entirely. Zammad also comes with some default internal filters that you cannot see in the UI nor adjust. They are responsible for example, the follow-up detection and such. These filters are global. This means that it doesn't matter in which of Zammad's available email channels you configure these. You can reach the same tab content within email channels, Google channels and both Microsoft 365 type channels. Filters are generally considered in the order of their alphabetical naming. They can be cloned and removed as needed. When adding a new filter, you can provide a meaningful name to it. Ideally, the filter name gives a short hint on what it does, so that you can find it better. In the Match All of the Following section, you can filter for messages with specific attributes like the from or to header. You can also choose from a list of predefined headers to interact based on specific values. In the Perform Actions section, you can define what Zammad should do with a message based on the matches. Filters can adjust ticket attributes and text. This can be done both, in context of a ticket creation or ticket update. This allows you to even run different actions depending on the situation. The only downside on this is that the UI currently doesn't help you to differentiate the configuration very well. Additionally to that, a filter can adjust the visibility, message type and sender of the article that is going to be created. The message type by default would be email in this situation, but you could manipulate it to, for example, a phone note. Within sender you can choose in between the three user types Zammad knows: customer, agent or system. The last very specific option is to ignore the message. Use this with care because anything that matches your filter will cause Zammad to silently discard affected messages. You can use the note field for useful information for other admins or yourself. A very simple filter example would be based on the spam header of emails. This header exists on most installations, but its name might differ depending on the mail system. If you receive a message that has been detected as spam, you can automatically add a tag named spam and move it to a specific group. Of course, you could also use this to automatically close the incoming mail if your filter basically never messes up. Signatures are a must-have for emails. Of course, Zammad supports signatures. They can be dynamic to a certain point and are set on a group level. Agent-based signatures are not possible, however can still offer some level of personality for individual agents thanks to variables. Unlike filters, signatures cannot be removed but cloned only. These signatures are global. That means it doesn't matter in which of Zammad's available email channels you configure these. You can reach the same tab content within email channels, Google channels and both Microsoft 365 type channels. The configuration of a new or existing signature is fairly easy. Give it a meaningful name and then configure the content of the signature. As mentioned, you can use variables. To open a list of these, you can use two columns just like with text modules in the front end. The editor in this model supports all formattings that Zammad supports in general. Right now, formattings can only be achieved with keyboard shortcuts. You can even paste inline images into a signature. However, more complex signatures with links and tables are rather complicated. While you can use your browser's developer tools to adjust HTML content, this is rather troublesome. Note that not all HTML structures will work, because Zammad has a sanitizer that might get in your way here. For the sake of the length of this video, I will not go in further detail here. To configure your signatures to a group, head to your group configuration and select the signature you want. Now the last part of the email channel is the settings tab. Some of these settings are not available in software as a service because they are globally managed. These settings are global. That means that it doesn't matter in which of Zammad's available email channels you configure these. You can reach the same tab content within email channels, Google channels and both Microsoft 365 type channels. As mentioned earlier, within the notification channel configuration, you can use the notification sender to adjust the sender address of the notification channel. By default, the value is notification master with no reply at systemfqdn of your Zammad installation. This value has to match the outgoing email configuration you have configured for a notification, because otherwise the mail system will deny these notifications to be sent. With additional follow-up detection, you can configure how much data of an email Zammad uses to detect follow-ups on existing tickets. These settings can have a huge negative impact on the quality of detected follow-ups. By default, only subject and references is activated. It causes Zammad to check the subject of an email to find fitting existing messages and their message IDs. In some situations this is not enough. For this reason you can also use further references with the references setting. This will cause Zammad to also take message IDs from all articles of a ticket into account. That can be useful in some situations where email flows are rather chaotic. The next two options of the follow-up detection are rather dangerous and likely to cause false positive follow-ups. Use these with care. Attachments causes Zammad to look for references of messages with the attachment of a fetched email. For example, for messages that have been forwarded as an attachment. Last but not least, Buddy will look for ticket numbers and hooks in the body of a message. This one is the number one culprit for bad follow-up detections, because a simple phone number in the signature can cause Zammad to find a ticket number where there is none. This one should be your absolute last resort. Maximum email size defines the maximum allowed size of messages. By default this is 10 MB and can be a maximum of 150 MB. Please keep in mind that Zammad is not a file sharing platform and most email systems do allow something between 20 to 50 MB in total. Consider using tools that are made for sharing files, like Nextcloud, Cfile or similar. The maximum allowed email size setting has a direct data setting called Send Postmaster Mail if mail too large. The setting defaults to yes, which causes Zammad to automatically reply to the sender if the message was too big. The message requests the sender to reduce the message size and hints on the actual limit. Zammad installations that are older than Zammad 3.2 had a default of the setting set to no, to reflect the original behavior. Originally, Zammad would silently fetch the message and remove it from the mailbox if the keep messages on server setting was set accordingly and put the email into unprocessable mail. This has several downsides. The sender does not know that their message never came through and might expect an answer that never arrives. Also, the administrator has to take extra steps to drop the mail from unprocessables, causing extra workloads. Both scenarios are bad user experience, so my personal suggestion is to stick with yes here. With sender based on reply to header, you have important control over the way Zammad detects the ticket customer during the creation of a ticket. By default, the setting is unset, which means disabled. However, you can configure Zammad to not just take the reply to header in consideration, but also if you just want the email address and display name that's configured there to be customer values. This is not just relevant for the ticket article itself, which will override the from attribute, but also will cause Zammad to create new customers of unknown addresses in the correct way. The downside on this is that the sender address is being different from the actual value, which may be confusing in abuse situations. Agents have to pay extra attention here. The correct and original values can always be retrieved via the raw message of the article itself. You may wonder why this is relevant. Well, most companies use contact forms that send emails. Many of these forms act like they are sending as the actual sender. This is bad behavior because you're sending as email domains you technically not own. For this reason, it makes more sense to use a no-reply email address as sender address of said form. As you can't answer your customers conveniently that way, it makes sense to use the reply to header for that. This is where the circle closes. Now let's come to a rather special setting for ticket creations by email. Customer selection based on sender and receiver list is only relevant if an agent sends an email to Zammad. With the default setting being set to yes, this means that if the sender is an agent, Zammad will use the first user in the recipient list to be the customer of the ticket. If you set this to no, Zammad will use the agent's email address as ticket customer, if that is the sender. Be aware that agents require access permissions on the group of affected tickets, because Zammad doesn't have a customer-specific interface. Otherwise, they cannot see the tickets they are customer in. As Zammad can reply to any incoming email based on triggers automatically, this can be an issue with certain email addresses. Usually it doesn't make any sense to reply to no-reply email addresses, because they are used for sending email only. For this reason, you can configure block notifications on on-premise installations to tackle this. Any alias on this list will not receive any notifications from Zammad. The default setting usually is good enough in most scenarios. Earlier we had a look on Zammad's display names for email addresses. I mentioned that by default, Zammad will combine the agent's name with the display name. This is globally controlled with the setting sender format. In many scenarios, you might not want that the customer feels a somewhat soulless reply by a big ticket system. For this reason, you might want to choose agent name as option here. However, the downside, especially with Outlook, is that the display name will be stored in its internal address book. So even if a different agent answers, the first agent that answered at some point will always be the displayed name from the support email address. This might be undesired, which is why you can also set the setting to system address display name. This is the exact name of what you can configure for the email address. Should you stick with Zammad's default setting to use the agent name with a separator and the system address display name, you may want to take a look at sender format separator. This allows you to adjust the separator in between those two values. By default, this is wire. As Zammad basically is somewhat of an email client, it doesn't just support replying to emails, but also forwarding it. As any email client, Zammad appends specific default wording in the front of the subject if you're forwarding or replying to an email. This is controlled by ticket subject forward and ticket subject reply. If the default wording does not fit or you want to use a more specific one to your local language, you can adjust this with these two settings. The colon will automatically be added for you. Last but not least, Zammad limits its subject length to 110 characters by default. Using ticket subject size, you can adjust or decrease this limit as needed. If the subject is longer than the set limit, Zammad will shorten the string with an indication to ensure that the ticket slug and number, if enabled, is always visible. Note that this can also be troublesome if you communicate with a third-party ticket system. You may want to add both ticket numbers in front of the subject in these scenarios, to ensure the follow-up on both sides always works. There are some global settings you might not expect where to find them. As they are relevant for how Zammad behaves during the creation of email replies on a ticket, we should talk about these as well. These settings are available to any agent with administrator permissions. Administrators without access to tickets cannot adjust these. At the top within any ticket, you can find a little setting button too. This will open a modal with ticket editor related settings. When replying to an email in a ticket, the easiest way to do so is by using the Reply or Reply All button in the ticket. You may have noticed that if you do, all that is available to you is the to and CC field. You can optionally enable the subject field. If the subject field is disabled, the ticket title will be the subject. If you enable the subject field, the ticket title and subject of the message can be independent. Keep in mind that if your customer can log in, they will still see the ticket title. This may be relevant in some cases where the ticket titles are too complicated for whatever reason. While we are talking about the ticket titles, these can be adjusted by clicking into the title area. Clicking anywhere outside of this area will update the ticket title. The setting email full quote is much more important in my opinion. While it is turned off by default, agents can always mark the relevant text portion and click on reply to create a quotation. Quoting in general helps, especially with long ticket emails, to help the customer understanding the points to refer to easier. Of course, you can also enable the full quote. If you do, Zammad will always add a full quote of the message that you are using the reply button on. Don't worry, you can still select only a subportion of the text to only quote the relevant parts. Of course, you can also always break a quotation in smaller parts. The last email relevant setting is email quote header. This allows you to disable the header Zammad adds to a quotation by default. This can be useful if you are not planning to tell the customer who exactly answered. These settings can be a game changer in the use of Zammad, so I hope they help you as well. Now that was quite a big chunk of settings. There's more settings that are hidden and only available via Zammad's Rails console. If you're using Zammad software as a service, drop the support a message if you want these to be adjusted. The following settings are related to emailing mainly, so I will not handle all available settings in Zammad here. Most companies that don't just handle support, but also financial data and depending on their location, are required to archive emails. Now, there's several ways to do this and this is no legal consultation. But at least for outgoing, the easiest approach might be to send all outgoing emails to an archive email mailbox via blind carbon copy. You can check the current value with setting get system_bcc. By default this will be empty. You can set your system BCC address like so. After setting this, Zammad will send a copy of all new outgoing emails to this address. A very crucial and helpful setting in my opinion is the option to also display the customer's email address during the ticket creation. This is extremely useful, especially if you have several customers with similar names and to verify the search returned the correct values. Enable UI user organization selector of the email by setting it to true. Disable it by using false, that is also the default. You can configure the font and font size Zammad shall use with HTML email CSS font. Please be aware that the font you choose here has to be supported by the receiving client. You should always also configure fallback fonts. Also, there's a huge difference in between px, so pixels, and pt, so points. Microsoft Office, for example, uses points over pixels, so the behavior might differ greatly if you stick with pixels here. This setting has an impact on outgoing emails only. It will not change any fonts in Zammad's user interface. The last very useful setting affects attachments in a ticket. Depending on how many articles you have in a ticket, the overview of all attachments of all articles gets somewhat lost. Zammad comes with the setting UI ticket zoom sidebar article attachments that enables an attachment listing in the ticket sidebar. That way you have a chronicle list of attachments at hand. Please note that this does not cover inline attachments. I hope that this video helped you with the configuration of your email channels and the settings that belong to it. Let me know your opinion in the comments. Until next time, take care.